For the last 50 years, human spaceflight has been confined to low Earth orbit, strictly circling within a few hundred miles of our home planet. No one has ventured out into deep space since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. That pause is over. It took 2 decades of development and over $50 billion to construct the Space Launch System, a massive rocket standing 322 feet tall, designed specifically to push humanity back toward the moon. Riding on top of this rocket will be the crew of Artemis II. This 4-person team includes a series of historic firsts: the first woman, the first Black astronaut, and the first non-American to ever leave our immediate orbit. This diagram outlines their exact path. They will travel 965,000 kilometers over 10 days, fly straight toward the moon, and then loop right around it. There is no lunar landing on this itinerary, which invites a rather obvious question. If you spend 20 years and tens of billions of dollars building a machine capable of reaching another world, why fly all the way out there just to turn around and come straight back? Before NASA can commit to building bases or mining resources, we have to know if these new systems can actually support a crew for 10 days in the deep space environment. These 4 astronauts are the first to test the hardware's limits before we attempt a landing. Pushing a payload out of Earth's gravity well requires a massive increase in power compared to a standard trip to the space station. To get 60,000 pounds of hardware all the way to the moon, the SLS must generate millions of pounds of thrust at liftoff. Once in space, the crew is confined entirely inside the Orion capsule. Despite its formidable exterior, the actual livable space inside this cone is severely restricted, roughly equivalent to the interior volume of just 2 minivans. 4 adults will share this incredibly tight footprint for 10 solid days. There is virtually zero personal privacy, meaning every moment of work, sleep, and survival happens shoulder to shoulder in a confined metal box. A primary objective is to test the cylindrical section attached directly beneath the capsule, the European Space Agency-built service module. This component is entirely responsible for their life support, electrical power, and the main propulsion system needed to steer the craft. This animation maps out a failsafe known as the free return trajectory. If the propulsion system completely fails, the spacecraft's specific flight path allows it to catch the moon's gravity, which will passively sling the capsule in a figure 8, throwing it back toward Earth without firing an engine. By relying on orbital physics rather than purely mechanical engines, NASA is using the moon's own mass as the ultimate insurance policy for keeping the crew alive. The mechanics of this trajectory will eventually push Orion past the far side of the moon. Because the moon itself will sit directly between the spacecraft and Earth, the crew will face a total communication blackout lasting between 30 and 50 minutes, completely severing them from mission control. Out there, they are entirely exposed. Earth's magnetic field no longer shields them from deep space radiation or sudden intense solar flares that could flood the cabin with lethal doses of energy. If a high radiation event occurs, the astronauts have to quickly dismantle their environment. They will rip up the foot panels beneath the pilot seats and hide inside the subfloor storage compartments to ride out the storm. Once they survive the deep space transit and approach Earth, Orion will jettison the service module. The capsule then pivots, aiming its protective heat shield forward to face the punishing friction of the atmosphere. This chart shows the extreme velocity shift they will experience. The spacecraft will hit the atmosphere at 40,233 kilometers per hour, resulting in a sudden, violent deceleration to zero. That massive drop in kinetic energy converts instantly into thousands of degrees of searing heat. Testing whether this heat shield can hold up against that inferno without cracking is the single most important hurdle of the entire 10 days. Surviving that fiery descent is the absolute non-negotiable requirement for greenlighting all human lunar missions that follow. Once the recovery teams pull the astronauts out of the Pacific Ocean, the data from this flight will confirm if the Space Launch System and Orion are safe enough to carry humans regularly. A successful splashdown clears the board for Artemis III, 4, and 5. With the transit vehicle proven, NASA can pivot to the next phase, putting boots in the lunar dust. Current timelines project returning humans directly to the lunar surface sometime between 2027 and 2028. This schematic shows how future missions operate. The Orion capsule won't land on the moon itself. Instead, it will wait in lunar orbit, acting as a deep space hub that docks with specialized commercial landing vehicles built by companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. Those landers will head straight for the lunar South Pole. That specific region holds frozen water that can be refined into rocket fuel, alongside deposits of helium-3, an isotope that could power future energy reactors back on Earth. Flying almost 1,000,000 kilometers without landing might seem like a compromise, but it is the technical trial required to bridge the gap between the Apollo era and a sustainable human presence on the Moon.